Hey guys, I know many of us, if somebody asks you, what are your priorities? What's your first response? Probably my faith, my family, my marriage, my kids, my health, my business, my friendships, etc. And we say these things, right? And I remember when I hired this consultant, Tim, good friend of mine now, he asked me a question. He says, George, what are your priorities? And I said, God, family, health, business, right? Go through my list. He says, okay, cool. He says, is it in your schedule? Like if I looked at your schedule, would I see that? And up until this time, guys, I would counterbalance, right? And we talk about this all the time that you can have everything that you want, but you can't have it all at the same time. But I would feel like, man, okay, the business is really good, but marriage is not good. Man, I'm really focused on faith, but I'm not focused on health, or I'm focused on health, but the business took a hit. And I realized that, I would drift. Things would go bad, and then I would fix them. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to be on top of my life. I wanted to feel like, man, I'm living, there's chaos, obviously, when you're running a business, but I'm living a more balanced, unbalanced life. And so he says, so what's your priority? And I said, God. He says, where's it at in your schedule? What's your priority? I'm like, my marriage. Where's it at in your schedule? And in our business, there's couples that work together. My wife and I don't work together in the business. She supports the business. She's involved. She attends conferences, etc., but she's more raising the kids. And we met once I was already into the business years and years later. And so we have a little bit different of a schedule than people that see each other every day, like a lot of the couples that work together. So I had to figure out something that worked for us. And everybody's got to do that. It's too many times we look at other relationships and we're like, well, look at that couple, right? And a husband will be like, why can't you be more like that wife? Or, hey, why can't you be more like that husband? That's the worst thing you can do in your relationship is compare that person to somebody else. And the worst thing that you could do for you is to compare your life to somebody else's. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't take great things from their life to say, hey, I really like that about them. How could we improve that? How could we have that in our lives? And so I started putting certain things in my schedule every single day, and I started finding times that they worked. And you got to find ways that work for you. And one of them was faith. And I'm grateful to God that he helped me and guided me and encouraged me and showed up in my life. Over the last year, we read the Bible from front to back. And the more that you read the Bible, the more that you realize that you don't know the Bible, that you really need to go research. Like the more you learn something, the more you know you don't learn it. So it's not like, hey, I read the Bible, I'm arrived. No, it's more like, wow, there's a lot that I got to go learn. There's a lot more accountability, responsibility. There's a lot more information that I know now. I really want to take a deeper dive. So it's more the start than it is the finish. But we found a system that worked for me. I like to text and drive because I'm trying to be productive and make calls, and I'm doing this and at the same time, that's how accidents happen. You understand that. We've all been in a place where it's like we almost hit a car, we were texting and whatnot. And I'm like, man, I really got to work on this stuff, especially being a dad, 2 kiddos. Like, I got to work on it. And I'm like, man, I'm going to use this time on my way to work every day. It's 18 minutes. I can get an entire Bible day done, meaning my verse for the day, my scriptures, my get a whole day completed. So I started doing that on my way to work. And that simple new habit of the moment I get in my car, that the first thing that I do is I just start the Bible app. In less than a year, we were able to read the entire Bible. And that was just a new habit. But I had to put it in my schedule. See, it goes back to, are your priorities in your schedule? My marriage, I looked at, hey, man, Monday, Tuesday, super busy days in the office. And we start early and we end late, right? So by middle of the week, Wednesday, I had to counterbalance that, right? So maybe it was breakfast, maybe it was the lunch, and then, man, get back in the office, right? And then, hey, you know what? Middle of the week, we kind of need a date night, right? So we did our date night on Thursday. And then, hey, you know what? Saturday evening after X amount of time, right? And Sunday, family time. So we created a schedule, and here's what happened. We would be running and something would come up, a client meeting would come up, or a trip would come up, travel would come up, a convention would come up. And what we normally do when that comes up is we just cancel it. And as I'm talking to Tim, he says, George, one of the things that I've realized about people that live well-balanced lives is they do not cancel commitments, but they will move them to a different time and still keep them. He says, as a husband, father, I want to say they have 5 kids, maybe 6. He's like, I realized that I wasn't putting my wife as a priority in my schedule. And instead, I just cancel, like, hey, I'll make it up next week. And I'll make it up next week. And then all of a sudden you do that a few times, you get busy and the relationship takes a strain. So I learned to say, hey, this day, this time, this is going to be my date night. And if something comes up that day where I have to do it that day, then instead of canceling it and I'll make it up next week, moving it, right? And that became a priority because it was my priority, but it wasn't in my schedule. Health-wise, right? Hey, you do better when you give yourself time, when you take care of your body. And everybody's schedule is different. Some people, it's morning, afternoon, evening. It's easier for them to work out. Everybody's got a different schedule. You got to do what works for you. See, the problem is that we look at somebody else, we're like, I'm going to do that. Maybe your scenario is different. Maybe they're single, you have kids. Maybe they, they're what they do for a living. Their mornings are busier, or their evenings are busier. So everybody's got a different life. So you got to create a routine that works for you, but it has to be in your schedule. It's got to be a priority. If you're going to say that health is a priority, or marriage is a priority, or your faith is a priority, or your family is a priority, if it's not, when we look at your weekly schedule, if it's not in there, it's not going to happen. And that's how I was living my life. And we had a great life, but I wanted it to be better. And that helped. Putting things that are priorities in your schedule helped. And you do end up building this perspective of, man, I'm living a better life. My faith is growing. And your faith, how you do your faith, right, it showed up in my business, right? Just helping people. And I got to work on it all the time, but giving grace, understanding that people are flawed, understand that, man, people need forgiveness, like these kinds of things, right? It helped me actually apply it to, my marriage or to my family. It made me a better entrepreneur, working out, my health and having better energy. It made me better in the business. My marriage and my relationship going great with my family made me happier. So these kinds of things we sometimes think that they're going to take away, right? Man, I could be making another sale. I could be doing this. I could be doing that. I could be doing this. And then everything else is falling apart in life. And your business is doing great, but your life's falling apart. And there's a limited perspective like, well, then I'm going to lose that sale. See, I think God can give you more in life with less time. I think when you show up better and your energy's better and you're present and you feel good and things are good, I think you close more. I think your conversion's higher, so I think you make up for it. And even if it was less productive, but your faith is growing, even if it was less productive, but your marriage is good, to be an example of other people that you can live, you can be healthy, you can have a great marriage, you can kill it in business, you can make millions of dollars, you can do all these things. What ends up happening is you actually expand your capacity. And there's this great quote. I want to say it's Parkinson's law, and it says work expands to fill the time it's given. When you put more on your schedule, more on your plate, right? You know how they say you got to get a bigger plate. Well, what happens is when you put more on your plate, you end up doing things. You end up being more efficient. You end up maybe saying, hey, I need a better system in this area. I need better technology. I need better tools. I need better staff. I need more staff, right? We need better training. Whatever it may be, you find a way to fit it all in. And since that, we've grown the business. We've grown the income. Since I made that decision, we've grown the income by close to 60%, from $1 million to $1.6 million. Health has been better than ever. Marriage has been better than ever. Faith has been better than ever. And the business has been better than ever. So the reality of putting your priorities in your schedule and actually living a life where you're living by your priorities, you end up being more successful in all areas of life. So I know some of you guys, I know many of you guys on here, you're like me and there's things that really matter to you, but maybe you don't have a system for them. And I wanted to make this video to encourage you to put those things in your schedule and then figure out, how could I still do all my responsibilities, and how could I do them better? And how could I grow my business, even whatever you're growing? How could I grow that even more with these priorities? And when you start asking those questions of how could I do more in less time, you're going to start to find solutions that maybe you've never thought about before, or ideas that you've never thought about before. And it's exciting when you're living that way, because you're just in the mode of creation. And I think anytime that you're creating and your energy is high and you're curious and you're living life from this journey, is so much more than, man, I have to do this, or it's another day, or here we go again, another week. Like, no, every week is different right now. Every week is better right now. And when you're doing that and you're giving that, you're excited to wake up the next day, because you're like, man, what's going to happen? Like, what's going to happen tomorrow? What good thing's going to happen? Who am I going to meet? What's going to happen? And it's just an exciting life to live. And I didn't do that before, and now I do, and I've realized a change, and I want to encourage you to do the same as well. So if you found some value in the video, please subscribe and like it. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Take care.